You're listening to the Clutter Fairy Weekly, a weekly webcast and podcast brought to you by the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas. If you'd like to participate in one of our live webcasts, please visit cfhou.com/weekly. You'll find a calendar of upcoming webcasts, as well as instructions for joining the Zoom meeting via the app or by phone. We'd love to see you. That URL again is cfhou.com/weekly. Now here's the weekly episode. Enjoy.
Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for February 24th, 2026. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hello, everybody. Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. I might have to just ask Gayle to copy that one out of another episode. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. And we are streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by talking about last week's weekly tittle, which was called, Do You Know Where Your Tax Paperwork Is? The assignment was to spend a few minutes making sure that you're prepared for the advice that we're going to give you this week about organizing paperwork in anticipation of preparing your taxes. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook. Who did the homework this week? Please let us know in the comments.
Anita has her hand raised already, actually.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we'll go to Anita in a minute. Let me say I didn't find a single response to our tax prep tittle assignment from last week. So I have to assume that most of our audience already has the tax paper situation under control, right? Maybe not.
No.
While we wait for input from our live audience, Gayle, I thought I would ask you another question that came from an audience member in response to a recent survey.
Okay.
I've been trying to, work these in wherever we can. Viewer Fernando wants to know, what was the most minimalistic, organized, and efficient house you ever worked on? What did it feel like to be in that space?
I read this question the first time and I thought, well, I generally don't get client calls for a house that's minimalistic, organized, and efficient. The person living in that space doesn't usually need my help for anything. So I have been in spaces like that, and how it feels to me is really very quiet. To me, they look very sere, clean lined, like looking at a desert dune landscape that's very, it's beautiful and it's unbroken vistas. Like it's just very unbroken. The look is very unbroken. And for my own preference, I miss the color of artwork and a few beautiful things to look at in the room. Most very minimal places I see are color neutral, made in whites or grays or creams. Like it's very color monochromatic and quiet colors. And that seems to appeal to those who prefer that organizational style. I haven't ever seen a minimalistic environment that was boldly colored. So overall, I'd say it feels both very quiet and very still. And you can understand why that'd be relaxing to someone coming home from a very stimulating day. If you come home to a house that feels very serene and unbroken and non-chatty.
and at least understimulating.
Yes. Like that would be.
It's not going to add to the chaos you bring home from you with work.
Yeah. Super relaxing, really. But like I said, I would miss the color. Because I'm more crafty, I appreciate looking at color in a house. And so I would miss, artwork on the walls or, the tchotchkes that I have that I look at.
Yeah.
I want them to be nice and clean to look at, but I don't want to be that sere, that continuous and unbroken. Just my personal preference.
Let's go to Anita, who's got her hand up. Go ahead.
What's happening, Miss Anita?
Well, I just thought I'd raise my hand because thank you so much for doing this today, because it's the one thing that got me to pull my stuff together. And I do not have it it's all the pieces are there, but now I have to go through my couple of accounts to pull out charitable donations because some of them are monthly and then I send them extras and whatever, and my checkbooks. And I now need to find a tax preparer because I didn't like the one that did it last year. So yesterday I called an accounting firm, and I will call another one today, and let's see who calls me back first.
Excellent.
Well, good for you. You're doing some stuff.
One thing I still do that helps a lot is for donations, when I get receipts, I have one of those old-fashioned tickler books, and one of them, the one I'm using, is alphabetic. So I can put under G for Goodwill and V for Volunteers of America. Every time I get those receipts, I just stick them in there so that the most I'm going to have to sort is out of two things in one letter of the alphabet when I get to those. And then
That's cool.
Put those together and add them up. And I hate doing taxes.
Don't we all? But I appreciate that you are capturing your, data so that it's easier for you to sort later down the line, and figuring out now what you have and what's missing is important in case you have to call somebody and get something from them, right? You need a little lead time for that. You can't call them on April 14th and get the problem solved, right? Like you need to, you need some time. So good for you to figure that out. And I will say that most charitable organizations, aside from Goodwill, but when you give checks to people, they usually track it and they send you, a document at the end of the year saying, anybody that gives money to church, the church sends a big thing at the end of the year, all that kind of stuff. They try to send you documentation to support it.
Yeah, but I saved it all.
Good for you. That's good.
Now I know where it is.
Now you know where it is.
I never want to be in the position I was in many, many years ago when I worked for a national tax preparing company. And I was the only, my husband thought it would be a great idea if I did that, and then I could stay home and do tax returns as a home business. And I got to tell you, it was a disaster because I was the only person in the office who lost money on the season. But I did learn how to where things go on a tax form and how to gather the information together. So
yeah, there you go. All right.
So at least I'm not dealing with a shoebox return.
Right.
All right, Anita, thank you. That's a great update.
Okay, I have a few more tittle reports coming in. Catherine says, just got the phone call. They are ready. So Catherine is way ahead of us all.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Jacqueline says, this week I finished a glass-fronted cabinet to display my crochet blankets in. I had started it a few months ago, but it got put on hold because my garage is not heated and it was too cold in there. I got my tax returns filed and they were accepted. I also sorted through my stock of work uniforms so I could put in my yearly order for anything I was running low on.
Ooh, look at you knocking things off that to-do list, baby. That is some awesome accomplishments. Yay. And I love the idea of a glass-fronted cabinet to put crocheted things in. Yeah. That's kind of cool. So you can see, the artwork that you've done on display without getting them, like not having them out in the way, and they're not hanging on something. They're not getting dirty. So
they're not collecting dust, right?
Yeah. That's cool. I like it.
Collecting dust at a much slower rate inside the cabinet.
That's really the truth, right?
M says my papers are together, so that's good.
Yay, that's the goal. It's a good time of year for that.
Barbara says, I am in the middle of doing my taxes. I may not be able to itemize any longer, so that makes gathering papers easy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just pull out an accordion file and all the tax documents go in the file until I start the process.
Well, and I will say, too, the rules around so many deductions are pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Stringent? Not exactly, but it takes some amount to qualify, right?
Many deductions have big thresholds that you have to meet.
Yeah.
And
so
if you don't meet it, there's no point in itemizing.
Gathering the paperwork, exactly. Yeah. So I think that a lot of people collect things for their tax return, assuming that it's going to get used, and then they don't look at the document to know, oh, I didn't meet the threshold for charitable deductions, therefore I didn't need to gather all this paperwork. It only works if what you have to deduct meets the threshold for deduction. And so I see this with medical paperwork a lot, and particularly people who are older and on Medicare, for instance, where a whole bunch of stuff is covered and what they have to spend out of pocket is so low that they never actually meet the threshold. So they may be
Right.
going to the doctors a lot and a lot of money's changing hands, but none of their money's changing hands. And so there's nothing really to document
Right.
for a deduction at that point, but
Yeah.
happens a lot.
CJ says, hubby has taxes sorted, so I finally did an inventory of the pantry.
Oh,
Set up a folding table and a big trash can opposite the pantry shelving. I removed everything from one shelf at a time and spread them on the table. After checking for goodness, I counted off to hubby, who digitized the inventory onto a shared app. This is really cool and a project that I need to do. So I'm very
wow.
excited to hear their process.
You digitize the pantry contents.
Yeah,
That's
Paprika, the
serious.
the recipe app that I've talked
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah. That you were
here
talking
before,
about
that
your recipes in. Yeah.
Deborah, I think, was the one who first suggested it to me. Um, you can put your pantry into Paprika, and then
Oh,
I assume it will then tell you, here are some things that you have all the stuff for. I haven't gotten that far. Uh, let's go back to CJ's comment though. She says, spread them on the removed everything from one shelf at a time and spread them on the table. After checking for goodness, digitize the inventory onto a shared app, then replaced back onto the shelf before moving to the next shelf. Made many discoveries. Items nearing expiration went next to the stove, and we cooked some of that for dinner.
awesome.
It has made me so happy to see that area clean and orderly after it had been disheveled for ages.
And it's always such a big relief, and when you realize how overstuffed it is, how much stuff in there you can no longer eat because it's not safe, and how much easier it is to function when there's breathing room in there,
Hmm.
and it teaches you that you don't need to overstock to function.
Right.
And so, good job. And I love that you digitize the pantry. Like, that's somebody that's, yeah, somebody's M is asking, how does he keep a digitized food inventory updated? So I guess you have to go in and mark when things have disappeared
Right.
in
Market
order
is
to keep it
used.
up. Hmm.
Yeah.
I'll be
Um,
fascinated to hear how that goes. You should come back and tell us how it works in functionality as time goes by.
Jane says, at the beginning of each year, I label a folder with the year and then put tax-related paperwork in it as it comes. This week, the entries were made in tax software and my taxes were submitted. A small refund is expected this year.
Whoop, whoop.
Yay!
That's always
Small
a good
refund is
thing,
better than
right?
no refund.
Right? Absolutely. Good job. And I like the idea of, everybody has to collect tax paperwork. Some you collect throughout the year. Some you get, we get a big, fire drill of it all between January and April. You get a bunch of paperwork, but there's always stuff that you have to collect during the year. And so having a file prepared for taxes 2025, taxes 2026, so that you can stuff, it's related to taxes, it's going in that file until I have time to deal with it. It's a good way to not lose it in the middle. So I think you don't want to be trying to hunt it down 8 months later. If you have it in your hand, it's related to taxes, you can stick it in the file right away. Works really well.
Um, M asked, how does one keep a digitized food inventory updated? And CJ said we change the number as we use it. So far, so good.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Okay, we should probably get on to talking about what we said we're going to
We're
talk
going to talk
about.
about the details. Here we go.
It's tax prep season in the US. Time to gather, review, and organize the documents you'll need to file your taxes. If you've been organizing records as you accumulated them, this will be a simple process. Maybe. If not, it depends on how complicated your return is, truly.
Right.
If not, we'll help you get them in order. Today, Gail's going to offer tips for organizing tax documents in preparation for filing your tax returns.
We are just past the first delivery date for tax documents to come from employers and businesses. January 31st is when the deadline for when W-2s have to be mailed to you. 1099s are supposed to come out. And so it's a time between January and April. There's a big flurry of paper that comes in the mail to you from the people that have that you have earned income from. They need to send you documentation. And like I said earlier, you get charitable documentation paperwork usually after the end of the year as well. So it's a good time to start thinking about the tax prep because we're sort of, 3 weeks into February. So you should, the flurry of paper has started to come is what I'm saying. So
Right.
I know my audience and a lot of you have issues with paper. You ignore it. You wait to work on it until there's a fire drill. You make stacks of paper to go through later. And then you wake up one day drowning in paper piles. So tax time is one of those fire drills. And you need to face the paper to get your tax prep done. So if you've been neglecting your filing or not opening your mail, it's a good time to catch up in support of tax time later, which is, coming down the pike. It's a good time to remind you of our filing concept of bigger buckets too. Lots of people find filing really annoying, and the default setup is to file everything alphabetically with a file for each kind of paper. That method means you end up with a large alphabetized row of files that are not in any logical order other than alphabetically. That means your car insurance file that's labeled Allstate is far away from your car repairs file in the alphabetically arranged files. It also means you've got to remember how you filed something. Did you make the file car insurance or Allstate? If you don't remember what file you created, you have no idea where the file is when you want to find it. And that's why we suggest using bigger buckets for your filing. In our example, everything related to a car would be in one or two files under the bucket called car. You only have a few cars. You could have a big bucket labeled car 1, car 2, etc., or car Honda, car Subaru. Then the car insurance, the car repairs, the car purchase documents, the car loan documents would all be in this big bucket called car Honda. That way, when you need something related to the car, you go to one file and find what you need there. It means you don't have to make as many files, that you can file by category instead of just alphabetically, and you do more fine sorting when you get into a file and you actually need something. This is built on the theory that you don't need to spend a huge amount of time finally sorting and filing paperwork that you'll likely never need for anything. Spend enough time now to get it in a bigger bucket file. Then if you need something later, you can spend a short time sorting just the contents of the one bigger bucket file that you need something out of. You're postponing sorting time until it's necessary and only when it's necessary. And it makes filing up front faster and easier. It makes finding what you want quicker and not so reliant on remembering the file name you used last year when you made that file for that one piece of paper. It's so much easier to say, I need the car insurance papers that's related to the Honda, so I need to go to the bigger bucket car Honda. That file is easy to find in your alphabetical files, and then you can start searching for the insurance in that larger file. If you only have 10 to 20 bigger bucket files, figuring out which bucket to search for what you want is easy, and the file is easy to find.
I want to repeat my favorite part of everything you just said.
Okay.
You are postponing sorting time until it's necessary and only when necessary.
Yes.
I think that is the most persuasive argument for making your filing system no more complicated than it needs to be. You know,
100%.
you can take, 4 boxes of paper that you need to keep and spend weeks getting it all into the filing cabinet in an intricate and extremely complicated system, and
with labels and file folders,
right, creating all the labels, spending all the money on the folders, and still you may not know where you put it because your system is so complicated.
And you still will not pull 85% of it out ever again.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You will spend an enormous amount of time filing things that you're never going to touch another time. And so, yeah, I think bigger buckets was kind of a life-changing revelation to me when we first started talking about it. This idea that no, I don't need to have an excruciatingly complicated filing system.
Right. I will tell you, one of my favorite files I ever saw that a client had made was an older woman who was clearly starting to slip a little bit.
Mhm.
She was the mother of my client. She wasn't actually my client. And she had made a file that was labeled Cardboard 2010. Had one piece of cardboard in it. She had cut a piece of cardboard and she saved it. And in order to file that, she put it in there in a file by itself with a label and put a year on it, like it was vintage cardboard. To me, it was the most extreme version of creating a file for every piece of paper does not make you more organized. Folding another file around a piece of paper and putting a label on it does not make you more organized. That is the fallacy of file folders and alphabetizing.
I would submit that, all of your cardboard, all the cardboard that you saved from every year could be in one file if you're going to keep cardboard in your filing
If you're
cabinet.
going to keep that in the filing cabinet anyway, yeah, like the whole concept about it was just, it was a perfect example to me of that was how she felt comfortable, like she was managing her paperwork. She surrounded
Right.
it with a file folder and
Right.
put a label on it, and to the most ludicrous degree.
Yeah.
And we all save paperwork because we think we're going to need it, or we're too afraid to make a decision about it, or we're too afraid to let go of it. And we have these conversations about what to let go of all the time.
Right.
We do. And there's always way more paperwork that people save. And every situation is different and everybody needs to have their own conversation about it. But I will promise you that you have saved more paperwork than you actually need. And
Right.
you can thin that out and you can put more pieces of paper together so that they're not all, every file has one or two pieces of paper in it, which if you have a bunch of files that have one or two pieces of paper, you're not doing filing right. That's what I'm just going to say. And we can go on from
Well,
there.
let's not use the judgmental, doing it right. You are
Well,
not,
okay.
you are
Not doing it effectively.
spending more time than you need to on filing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And making your life harder, and meaning that you're going to, you're doing something you already don't want to do the filing, and you're doing a longer filing project than you have to do.
Yeah.
And you're burning up more of your time than you need to.
I would submit
100%.
that some of the time people spend on excessive filing is probably because it feels more comfortable than the difficult decision making about, do I even really need this piece of paper?
100%. Yeah.
Right.
It's easier to go, I'll just put it in a file than to think about it. 100% see that all the time.
Okay, I'll let you go on with what you were trying to talk about.
Okay. I've seen alpha files that span a full 4-drawer file cabinet, and finding the right file was overwhelming. If you imagine a big, tall file cabinet that's 4-drawer and how deep it is, and if all those drawers are full of files and it's an alphabetized setup, who knows where your file is in that layout? If everything about a car is in one file bucket, all about the house is in one file bucket, it means it's very quick to get to a smaller subset of the file cabinet. You don't have to run through 4 drawers looking for something. And that's the concept of bigger buckets in action. So moving on to the project at hand, which is prepping your tax paperwork. If you've got a backlog of paper to be filed or mail to be opened, you can start with that task first. And like all mail backlog projects, most of it's going to be junk paper, and only a small portion will need capturing. So work on that process first. Focus on finding the mail that's related to your tax return versus what is not needed for the tax return. At this point, you can throw out easy trash, set the non-tax paperwork aside to deal with later. Just make these three piles for now: related to taxes, other paperwork that you need, and trash and recycle paperwork. In the bigger bucket concept of filing, taxes 2025 is the bigger bucket you're looking to populate for this project. So the other non-tax paperwork is being saved to file in their buckets another day. Secondly, think about what papers you need for your taxes. And I'm going to run through a list here. You need any papers that support deductions you'll take. You can pull that support right after year end. So check your prior returns to see what deductions appeared, especially if you have a tax preparer doing it. That's how you know what documents matter for the return. Digital copies of the paperwork are acceptable evidence for the IRS nowadays. So you can pull electronic copies or you can scan in the paper copy that you have and send that to the tax preparer instead. You need all of the W-2s and 1099s that prove any income that you've earned for the year. You'll be getting these in the mail during February and sometimes much later. Sometimes that's, stretches to
Yeah.
March or April. Watch your mail and your email for these starting in February. You should get a document from everywhere you've earned money, an employer, any business earnings, an investment you have earning money, any financial gifts you've received. Some will send you an electronic document instead of paper. So you may have to log in somewhere to download some of your forms. It's time to make sure you have good login credentials for those sending via email. If somebody's sending you and you only hear from them once a year and it's here's where your tax document is, you may not remember what your login stuff is. So now's the time to go figure it out. And if you don't have the password, reset it and do what you need to do to get in there and get your document. You don't want to be doing that in a crunch at midnight on April 14th. So time to go dig for those now. Check your last return to see what income sources you reported last year. You should expect to have a document for each of these same companies unless you sold or discontinued some income source during the year. If you sold a house in the past year, sold any investments, worked for anyone, either as an employee or they were your client, received financial gifts, earned income on investments you're holding, or operated a business that's earned income, you'll need to prove those amounts with some form of third-party paperwork. And that typically is a 1099 or a W-2. For a house, it would be a HUD-1 statement from the sale. If you sold a house and you got money for the house, there's a settlement statement called a HUD-1 that is the settlement of all the financial transactions at the sale of the house. And there's numbers on that document that the tax return preparer needs to have. You want to include any bank or investment statements for the tax year. These are easy to download from your banking apps right now, and it'll be harder to do it later. So don't wait until you get suddenly audited 3 years from now, and then you have to go back and get tax returns bank statements from 3 years ago, because you're going to have to submit a request and wait for them to be downloaded to your account or to be mailed to you. And so just download them now and file them somewhere, print them out, save them. And then if you don't have to have them, great. And if you do, then they're already there. You don't have to worry about it. These bank statements and investment statements serve as the third-party verification of the income you received, as a IRS agent can review what went into your bank account and investment accounts and see this is actually money that you earned, and these are the deposits that went into the account to show you earned money. Credit card statements, everybody always asks me about credit card statements. They only matter for tax purposes if there are charges related to deductions on your tax return. So maybe you charge some charitable donations, that happens a lot, or you charge expenses related to a business you're reporting on your return. Credit card statements are valid third-party support for those deductions if there's something you're spending money on, if you're paying with a credit card for something that's deductible. Don't keep a bunch of paper for expenses that have nothing to do with tax deductions. There's no point in sorting paper that you don't need. Don't worry about utility bills, for instance, unless you're using office in the home deduction. Not very many people do that anymore. It's not a super big deduction. It is very red flaggy to the IRS. They don't trust it, and so you often it's a little bit more suspicious when people do office in the home. It's harder to prove, and it's a lot of work to create the deduction for not a big amount of deduction. So if you're not doing that office in the home deduction, there's all kinds of things that you don't care about anymore.
Right. And if you can't share a space, you can't legitimately share a space with other functions. So
Yeah.
I don't take an office in the home deduction at all anymore, because I used to, when I had a piece of a room that was nothing but work. But
Yes.
now my work is in an armchair and on
In
a
the living
laptop
room.
in the living room.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I could still claim, postage stamp sized area and call it my office for deduction purposes, but the work
Mm-hmm.
involved in documenting the deduction is so much more than the taxes I would save.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, you just have to be really dedicated to that. And for
Yeah.
somebody that has an office that they exclusively use for the office and they don't use for any home purpose, and they're working out of their home 100% of the time, like there's lots of people working from home now. And so if you have a dedicated space, you could in theory qualify for the deduction. But
Yeah.
if that dedicated space is a corner of a room, the amount of square footage as a portion of the house is not very big. Therefore, the portion of each of those utility bills and the mortgage payment or the rent is not very big. Like you don't get a very big number at the end, so
Yeah.
it has to be worth your effort.
Right.
So basically, that's like don't keep a bunch of paperwork that you don't need for something that you're not going to deduct. If they don't relate to your taxes, then you don't care in the same way. And it's same about things you buy for the house and regular shopping. If what you bought is just running the house or keeping you clothed and fed, then there's no need to save that kind of stuff for taxes. So don't set it aside in the taxes pile.
Right.
Grab any records you have to support any estimated tax payments you've made during the year. If you have to make quarterly estimated tax payments, you're going to need to know what those numbers are to report them. So, you need to accumulate the support for that. And then sorting the mail regularly will help you keep up with those papers that you need after year end. And you should do this process at least in a timely manner from January to April every year. As this is when those documents are being released to you, this is when you're more likely to be getting those things in the mail. And so being a little bit more vigilant during this quarter of the year when a lot of the paper is coming to you will save you some suffering later. You can put your hand on it now and put it in that taxes file right now. And then remember at this stage, you're gathering things related to filing your tax return. That's the one big bucket that you're trying to fill. So later in the spring, some of you guys are already doing it, but if you're waiting until closer to April to do it, you can pull this big bucket of paperwork out and then start doing your fine sorting to add up the numbers you need to get the tax guy to tell this is what my income is, this is what my deductions are. You can do that part later. So it's splitting up some of your time and hours now to find the paperwork and gather it, and then later to sort it and do the adding up. And that's a reasonable split of the amount of time that you spend doing one or the other things. Trying to minimize what you have to do. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, let's go to some comments.
Okay.
Connie says, as I listen, I was thinking, doesn't the US government know everything about you? Can't they tell you what you owe? And
So the truth is yes.
yes, but
Yes, yes.
yeah.
But really, what happens is the companies that send you that information in the mail with the document of what you earned also electronically send that information to the government. And so the government can cross reference what you have said that you earned versus what the company said that you earned. And so they do that kind of work to make sure that you're reporting what the company is reporting. So yes, they do cross-reference that kind of stuff.
Um, and M replied, they probably can, but your job is to figure out what part of it you don't owe.
Yes.
It's true. The government knows about your income, but they don't know about your expenses,
Hmm.
and they don't know about they probably know about your charitable contributions too,
Depending on
because
how that
yeah,
who's
it
doing it and
depends on
how
the
it's got
size. It
reported
depends on the size of them and whether they're large
and who
enough
you gave
for the
money to.
recipient to report and that sort of
Mm,
thing.
mm,
But yeah,
mm, mm.
CJ says it's the adult version of the kids game. Guess what number I'm thinking of in my head?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that. That's good.
and uh, May asked a very specific question about expenses, and we are not qualified to give detailed answers on specifics of your tax filing. So, where do car expenses come into play at tax time unless you are depreciating for business.
They don't.
They don't.
And
Yeah.
and truthfully, they get around that by they make it easier for you by saying, instead of documenting all of your actual expenses related to the car, and you can just track your business mileage. And there's, you have to specify you went from here to here. It was how many miles. This is what the purpose was. This is the person you saw, that kind of stuff. You have to document. There's a specific documentation trail you have to give them. But then you can just say, I went these many miles. And they say, we figure it costs. That's what the mileage rate is for. They say this many cents per mile. We figure that's the cost of your car, the depreciation of your car, the maintenance of your car, the gasoline, all the things. We'll just give you 60 cents a mile and assume that covers most of your driving. And so that covers the expenses related to it. And so all you have to do is document the miles that you went and the business purposes, and then multiply by that rate, which is a slightly easier process than figuring out how many miles and figuring out all of the actual expenses related to your car and coming up with a percentage of business miles versus personal miles and multiply by your expenses. And it's a little bit more work if you don't, since you have to keep up with the business miles either way. If you just keep the business miles and then multiply by the rate they give you, then, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And so I don't keep the expenses related to my car. I just track my business miles. And, 75% of my driving is going back and forth to clients. So it's not hard. And I use a mileage app for that. And then I create a spreadsheet at the end of the year. And then I can say, here's all the people, here's where I went. You can look at my miles are real. Here's all, it's all related to clients. And if anybody was ever to audit it, it would tie back to my calendar and it would all make sense.
Yeah.
So
Jane says it seems like complicated filing systems are a carryover from when we got lots of paper.
100%.
In the digital age, there's much less of a need for paper filing. Are you seeing a corresponding reduction in the size of filing systems in clients' homes? What do you think?
Yes. I would say so, yes. Except for, so people our age, Ed.
Right. I was
People
going to
our
say,
age remember the time before computers. I was, in my 20s before I actually touched a real computer. And it was in the workplace. And so, and things have changed since I was in my 20s. So I remember what it was like to only have paper as a source and to only trust paper as the source. So there are people that are our age who still have that bias. And some of us have adjusted and some of us have not.
Yeah. And people older than us,
it's even worse.
To be even worse. Yeah. My father, bless his heart, keeps every piece of paper for at least a while, till he has time to decide that, the flyer from a grocery store that he's never gone to is not something that he really needs to keep for any length of time.
Right. It's true. And, the older the client, the more files and the more, involved the paper filing system is. And so I'm sure as we boomers age out and the generations come behind us, this is going to be less and less of a problem. There will always be paperwork to file, but there will never be the volume of paperwork there was back before computers existed. That's just how it is.
I consider myself Gen X because my life experience has been much more Gen X than boomer in nature.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the cusp.
I'm on the tail end.
May has a great suggestion. Make sure that dining room table is clear of everything before you start. Have pencils, calculator, etc. at the ready. Getting up to gather these items can sidetrack your mission at hand.
Yes.
It is definitely a good idea. You definitely don't want a bunch of paper that is unrelated to your tax returns to be anywhere in the
suddenly
mix.
Get in the mix. Yeah. We don't want to get in the mix. Oh, there's been some great questions flying by. One of them, let me go find the one that I saw go by.
I'm going to give you another one. I'll give you another comment in the meantime.
Okay.
Jacqueline says, we had a fluffy kitty folder in the filing cabinet when I was a kid. My dad was trying to file something cat related and was frustrated that there wasn't a folder for the cat.
Oh, there you go. I have one for pets. Absolutely. That has little stuff for my cats. Oh, this is a question I wanted to answer. Lisa asked me, what mileage app am I using?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not built in my QuickBooks. It's called Mile IQ, and it's an app on my phone. And so it tracks the movement of the car via the phone moving. And so it maps, it's tied to the navigation. I mean, it tracks the map where I am,
Right.
and it records when I stop and, start. Is it exact? No. Like sometimes I go and I'm driving and I get caught at a light and I'm in the line for a long time, and it will it thinks I've stopped the drive because I'm sitting still for a long time. So there are things where I have to, when I go to create the file, I have to go and merge two drives together because it was actually one drive with me stuck at a light too long.
Right.
Right. But, that kind of stuff is easy enough to adapt for. And it means that in the meantime, I don't have to write it down. I'm not trying to track it on paper. I'm not paying any attention. As long as the app is running, I'm getting a record of all of my movement. And then if I'm not sure where I went, I can go to the address that it thinks it's at in the app, and I can look it up. I can go to my calendar for that day. I can see where I was trying to go. Sometimes
So you can create a record if it failed to.
Yeah. I can edit the record if I need
Gotcha.
to say, okay, it thinks I stopped at the end of the block, but I was up here at this address, and I want to label that with the client's address. And so there's ways to adapt the data so that it's more accurate.
Right.
But I have to tell you that the adaptation that I have to do is 1,000 times less than me writing down my driving constantly.
Right. Then having to keep a complete log.
Yeah.
Right.
So I let Mile IQ run on my phone and let it run in the background. And then at any point I can go into the app on my computer, edit the drives if I need to, assign them as personal or business, like you can label them. And I do all that in the app. And then when I get it all how I want it in the app, when I feel like everything is reflecting accurately what happened, then I can download a file. And then I have a Excel file to put with my return.
Barbara said, I think a lot of people save things that used to count as deductions but don't any longer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. And that's a really strong argument in favor of looking at last year's return, especially if you're using a tax preparer, and maybe start a list of questions to talk to your tax preparer about if you go through last year's return and there are things you don't understand. If there's something you thought you were deducting and it's not reflected in last year's return, ask them, find out.
Now's the time to ask.
Find out. They may tell you, oh yeah, you're nowhere near the threshold to deduct that. So don't even worry about that.
And they can also give you an estimated threshold. Like if they can say, oh, we can't deduct it until you reach 7,000.
Right.
Then okay, I haven't spent 7,000 in medical expense cash out of my pocket this year.
Right.
So I don't have to worry about it. And then, truthfully, if you suddenly, a medical deduction is a good example of medical expense is considered a normal thing that you have to do. And they sort of bake in some of that into the automatic deduction, the regular deduction.
The standard deduction.
The standard deduction,
Yeah.
right? And so if you're going to deduct beyond that, if you're going to itemize your expenses and deduct medical, then it needs to be, they don't want you to be able to deduct it unless you're having a catastrophic medical year, right? It needs to be that you have spent a huge amount of money on medical expense.
7.5% of your adjusted gross income.
Yeah, which is a lot of money,
It's a
right?
lot of money, yeah.
So they want you to be able to deduct it if you're having if you're having a heavy burden of medical expenses in a particular tax year. And so you have to meet that threshold. Now, if you're going to know if during the year you had a heart attack and you were in the hospital and if you've had enough medical events and spent a bunch of money on recovery, you're going to know that during the year, this is the year that I'm probably going to meet the threshold. Right?
Right.
You're going to know that. And so if you have somebody who is chronically ill or has a sudden medical event, then the fact that those things have happened means you might meet the threshold this year for out-of-pocket expense. And if you do, if you're then if you know that in advance, then you can know that at the end of the year you're gonna want to pull all the medical paperwork that is money out of your pocket.
Right.
And then otherwise, you can go, yeah, I just had the flu this year. I'm pretty sure there's no way I'm going to make the medical deduction. And so I don't need to worry about gathering that paperwork. And I don't have to be miserable.
Gabriella mentioned if you want to deduct a home office in Germany, there may be an in-house inspection to see if the specified space is used exclusively for business.
Ooh, well, there you go.
They're really suspicious.
They're very serious about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then that's what I'm saying. Like, it's, you have to weigh how much effort it takes to make the deduction happen versus how much hassle.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, can you get the deduction, but is it a pain in your patootie the whole time? Then maybe it's not worth it, right?
Yeah. May says, I went to tax school when I found out my preparer missed a few deductions.
Ah,
I was able to go back a few years and file amended forms, though. Wasn't upset, as some of these folks are just people that went to tax school.
right? Just like you, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing about it. Like, you can always file an amended return. If you get a return in on time, then all of the ticking clocks stop. If you file a return and make the payments that are designated on the return, then you're out of trouble and you're square with the government. So if you want to do that and then go back and do research and figure out, oh, we missed this one, we forgot about that one, we didn't have time to get that one done. And you can go back and file an amended return later and say, hey, we need to make this change. We figured out there was a problem, and here we're submitting this new thing. And, I need to get money back, and they'll send you money back. So the trick is to get as much done as you can, meet the deadline so the clock stops ticking, and make the payment so the clock stops ticking on that. And then if you need to make changes, like May said, you can go back and amend. Even years later, you can go back and amend a return.
I don't know if you want to tackle this one or not, but let me ask you Joella's questions.
Okay.
How does one file back taxes for deceased loved one, for a deceased loved one? Any advice on tackling back taxes in general? Also sold a house last year and survivorship owner as the last person on the deed who is still alive. It's been very overwhelming going through grief and trying to do taxes for self, loved one, and selling the home we all shared within last year.
Right.
One of the deceased loved ones was the accountant who did the family taxes.
Oh,
That's tough.
My gosh.
That's
okay.
Tough.
Okay. But that is a project that is worth looping a tax preparer in to help you. It's going to cost you money to have someone help you, but I think it's worth it because they will know exactly what to ask you for. They will make it easier for you to do it, and they're going to be preparing it without the grief and emotions related to the tax return. And so it won't be hard. It's business for them. It's not trauma or grief. And so they can do it without the extra burden. And they can go straight to what they need to have. Like, they can ask you for exactly what they need to make it happen. The original question was, what about a deceased loved one?
Yeah.
And if they have to catch up taxes, that's fine. Lots of people do that. You pay interest and penalties. You do the calculation, you file the returns, you pay a penalty because you filed late. You pay penalty and interest if there was money that was owed that didn't get paid. If you actually made payments or you had money deducted from income you were earning and it was enough to cover the taxes that were due, then you're not going to get penalty and interest from that. But you get charged a penalty for not filing it on time. So there'll just be a little bit of expense. And I have to tell you that, it's a pain in the patootie to pay penalties and interest, but the interest is way less than a credit card. The interest rate's pretty low, and it's just the difference between I should have paid this much and I only paid that much and I was short, or I never made any payments, and it might be, you might be in the hole a little bit for it, but it'll be particularly for somebody that's deceased, right? It's a finite set of things that need to be filed and settled. And they can do it all at once, right? Like anybody that's going to catch a person up and then file their final tax return, it can just do it all in one big batch, right? They'll just file all of them together. I mean, they'll file each year and they'll send them all
Right.
in at once, and it'll all be done. So it's just a matter of getting them the paperwork they need to do it.
Yeah. Deborah says, Gen X here. I am halfway between keeping nothing and keeping everything.
Oh, there you go. All
But
right.
but Austria is largely paper focused, although is trying to become more digital. Many problems with this, but when it sometimes works, it works well.
There you go. Yeah, there's always an adjustment period, right? I remember when they switched in the United States to, yes, we accept digital copies of a document, a
Right.
third party document to prove.
Yeah.
And we went through this series where it was like, why can't I just give them the digital one? It's like, well, they won't take the digital one. They'll only take paper. So you have to
Right.
print it out. So we did go through an era when, you had to wait. They had to take the paper. They still didn't trust the digital. And then they got to a point they're like, okay, we agree and we'll go along with it. And so you can send digital copies. And that was like a big win when the United States was finally like, oh, I can keep digital copies of all this backup and it'll be okay. That was
Yeah.
helpful.
Deborah says, re charitable contributions. At least when I last lived in Canada, you could use a couple of years worth of charitable donations because it's unlikely that you'll meet the threshold in a given year. And that's true in the United States too. The well, there's actually a cap on charitable giving
Mm,
in the United States, and so if you have too much, you to
it
deduct,
carries
you can
over.
carry it over. I think for maybe 5 years.
Yeah, a little
I'm
bit.
not
There's
sure.
there's
I
there's
don't know the
some
details on
rollover
that.
capacity about
Right. Yeah.
that.
Amanda says, I'm an elder millennial and have been sorting out my silent generation pre-boomer parents' files. Paper has gotten easier in recent years, but I feel eternally unprepared living in a digital world with paper file retention training. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You're saying you don't have any paper file retention training? Well, go and listen to some more of our paper
No,
podcasts.
she's saying she has paper file retention
Oh,
training,
okay, okay,
which
okay.
leaves her unprepared for living in a digital world.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then, yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, you end up creating buckets in your digital files as well,
Right.
that you have to file stuff in, and so converting the concepts to digital is similar.
Well, and I mean, if you are very good at naming your files and attaching tags, associating tags with your files,
Mm,
you could conceivably just have one big giant bucket that contains everything and rely on search to find the thing you need. Now, most people aren't comfortable with that and would rather,
because you do have to
still have
remember
some
how the file
folders.
is, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
issue. It means you have to remember how you filed it.
Okay, we are just about out of time, so
Mm,
we should probably talk about the coming weeks.
yes,
We are going to be
please.
back next week, February, no, today's February 24th, March 3rd. Sorry, I'm falling behind here. We will be back Tuesday, March 3rd at the usual time, and we're going to talk about the death of a spouse. We've talked about this before in terms of um, the implications of the stuff your spouse leaves behind, but we're
Mm.
also going to talk about some other aspects of that issue, planning and whether to downsize, whether to age in place. How
Yeah,
does
this is
how
based on a
does all this
survey
change? Yeah.
question.
Yeah, this was
Somebody asked
actually a
us.
question from an audience member who wanted us to dig a little deeper into the topic of death of a spouse and the implications for clutter and uh, home organizing. And then March 10th will be our next book club episode. We're discussing New Order, a decluttering handbook for creative folks and everyone else by Faye Wolf. I'm really looking forward to that.
That's
Gail,
coming
why
next.
don't you give us the title?
This week's title is Tax Prep Soft Launch. This week's assignment is to start into motion on this year's tax preparation project if you haven't already done so. And very David Allen-esque, identify the very next step you need to take in the process of preparing and filing your tax returns for 25. If you've done nothing so far, you can start with last week's title, which was about gathering together your tax related documents. If you've already done that, you might plan to sort the documents into broad categories according to where the information will go in your return, such as sources of income, business expenses, medical spending, charitable giving, etc. If your paperwork's already organized, you can plan time this week to start completing the forms. Sometimes the process of filling out tax forms reveals any additional documents that you need to collect or any new agenda items that you need to talk to the tax preparer about. If you've already completed your returns or you live in a jurisdiction where you don't need to file taxes, then you can identify a next step in another paper organizing project that needs your attention. Schedule time this week to work on whatever next action step you've identified and come back and tell us how you're doing.
All right. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live.
Yes,
To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from our audience, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
I will say that if you get a chance to come and join a live room, I definitely encourage you to do so. There's a whole second show going on in the chat.
Right.
I'm doing my presentation, but then all the people in the Zoom room are having their own conversation and their own, discussion that's going on. Sometimes it's about what I'm talking about. Sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm talking about. They're in there chatting away at each other about all kinds of stuff. So if you want the benefit of our great Zoom audience and all the things that happen in there, I encourage you to join us live. And then when we go off the air, we turn it off and shut it down, the recording. Then we have a little in Zoom room conversation at the end where you get to participate and not worry about being on the recording. So if you want to ask some questions, you don't want to be part of our recorded video, that's your opportunity to do so. So, if you get the chance, come and hang out in the Zoom room with us one day. It's a lot of fun. We have a good time here, right, guys?
We do.
Yay. I can hear you in the background. Okay. Love you. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.